Hello and welcome to the Stateside Soccer Show. My name is Jordan. With me, as always, is Logan. How are you today, Logan?
I'm doing well. You'll actually see Ashley here in a little bit because I forgot to have my water. So if you see my wife pop in, but Jordan, besides kind of dehydrated, I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. There she is. Thank you. Appreciate this great producers around here in this house. So
She works for free too, so give her a
don't tell
hand
people
there.
that. Don't tell people that. That's illegal. But Jordan, I'm doing all right. I'm doing as good as we can be. As good as we can be. So
yeah, big episode today. We had what people are calling the biggest upset in MLS history. We have then we also have Miami got knocked out of the playoffs as well.
I was like, where's he going with that? That's good.
Yeah, and then we have, of course, the Jim Curtin news, which is what I was referring to with the biggest upset in MLS history. And just talking all the playoffs and such as we go, and then looking ahead to the international window, which is starting and has started. And if we were a Premier League show, we would have a whole episode about this ref that's getting suspended for. Did you see this at all?
Yeah, that was bad. That was
His
really
comments
bad.
on Klopp and Liverpool from a few years ago leaked.
Yeah. Well, you want some truth though, like you want some truth serum that you probably won't like out there, fans. There's probably a good handful of refs that have their biases and preferentials, and they're not supposed to, but I guarantee you there's I mean, they're human. So I feel like it's not everybody, but I do feel like there are some people that once you build a bad relationship, it's hard to fix that, even in a professional setting like this.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't think what he said was that egregious, honestly. Like, I mean, yeah, don't ever admit to that, but I'm sure there are asshole managers that the refs don't like, but they probably still call a fair game. Like he said, he likes Milner, and Milner was on Liverpool, so
right.
Whatever. Yeah, maybe a little too much truth thing there, but he's suspended. So that happens during international break. That Premier League news cycle is rolling right now. You got Pep with 4 straight losses and all comps. Crazy times. Over here, we had Messi crash out of the cup. And Jordi Alba came up with a really interesting format that has been explored, I don't know, 50 years ago in American sports. I think he thought it was new, but we'll fill him in on that later. But where I want to start off actually is with the Jim Curtin stuff. It's been top of mind. Philadelphia just did their press conference earlier today around lunchtime. This was a shock. I want to say it was a shock, but I don't know. I kind of felt like if there were to be change, it would have been this year. And I was kind of like, oh, of course, they're going to dig the hole even deeper. What I mean by that is if people haven't been following or don't know any Union fans online, okay, so they unveiled this new premium seating option, right? Right behind the goalposts on both sides, which means that there's going to be premium seating for expensive money right in front of the Sons of Ben. Talk about a good time. These people are not going to be able to hear anything. And what they are going to hear is filled with F-bombs throughout the whole time. And they're going to be paying like $5,000 a seat or whatever, and they're going to be sitting right behind the goal. But that means there's probably going to be no more banners that they can hang there for the Sons of Ben. Like, the fans are pissed, right? The fans are already pissed because of the results of the season. Then you have this premium seating option thing drop. And then, a week or two later, the news drops that Jim Curtin is fired. Not that he left. I think if anybody thought we would ever part from Jim Curtin, he would have been like, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
I'm out of here. But he was fired, Logan. And that might be the most shocking part of it. And it was what day was it? It was Thursday. It was the day I was in the office at work. So of course I'm like reading all this stuff while at the office. Like what? And I was able to kind of get it out of my mind a bit by then focusing on work there in the office and stuff. But I would keep like it almost didn't feel real, right? It didn't feel real at times because it's like this guy has been there for 10 years and he is from Philly. He went to Villanova. He is somebody that's been with the club for a long time. He's been there for 14 years. Now as manager, he's been there, 10. But I think he was like assistant coaches and stuff throughout the and youth coaching previously. Logan, he is a 2-time MLS Coach of the Year, and he's the youngest guy to do that. And those are relatively recent Coaches of the Year. I think it was 2020 and 2022. And here we sit 2 years later, and he is fired. He took us to 3 Open Cup finals, an MLS Cup final just 2 years ago. Literally, like this weekend, I believe it was, or Friday, it was really close, was the anniversary of that MLS Cup because it ended early for the 2022 World Cup. And I had on my Time Hop videos and pictures of me going up to the watch party and stuff. That was 2 years ago, this week or last week. And last year, yeah, they didn't do as well. This year, of course, they didn't do as well. But they injuries. Blake, I think if Blake's healthy, this team makes the playoffs. They only missed by a few points. And he's gone. We have an article from Jeffrey Carlisle I'll be quoting later, but just give me your first thoughts when I sent you the text with the tweet.
I would say stunned. I mean, it like you said, for a guy that's been there for so long and for the success that they've had and what seemed to be a really good relationship with players, I would say up until last year, because then we started to hear, Jordan, about all these reports that Bedoya had some disagreements with Curtin and Jose Martinez, which, Jose Martinez, that's not hard to believe that he would be a problem. He's just kind of got that attitude. But it's like you started to hear weird things like Kai Wagner.
To be clear, though, I believe the Bedoya stuff and the Wagner stuff was beef with Ernst.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
not
but
Curtin, because Curtin came out and said he wanted to keep those two, and they eventually did.
But I think, like, talking to that, it's like, I think acknowledging that there was a problem somewhere, and whether it was with Curtin or whether that was with Ernst Tanner or both, or, just the direction of the team as a whole. I think, Jordan, this was a team too that had such high hopes the last couple of years. And then this year they really underperformed. But I think an aging core of players that we knew, that you and I knew, that the window was now and slightly closing as time had gone on, because these players are getting older. I just feel like it's strange timing for me. The season's been over for a couple of weeks for them, and we're kind of going into this weird, and MLS is really weird anyway, because the coaching carousel. I mean, I imagine the union are going to hire somebody that we've not yet seen in a head manager's position. It'll be interesting, but I don't know. Like I was stunned. I was shocked that would happen. I thought maybe it was possible that they blow this thing up, but I would guess that Ernst Tanner and Jim Curtin's relationship became very strained, and that's where that decision came from, was to move on, because it's just very strange to me. Like, one bad year after a couple of really successful seasons. And it wasn't like that this was a team that is on the up and up. It's more on the backside of it. So it's like there must have been some really deep conversations amongst the group that, they were better off moving forward from Jim Curtin. But from the sounds of it, I think they got rid of the wrong guy.
Yeah, here is a quote from the Jeff Carlisle article here. He said, somebody had to be the scapegoat, and they scapegoated Curtin. One source familiar with the union's inner workings told ESPN. I think it's pretty clear. I think Sugarman had questions, and Tanner got to put it all on Curtin. Then there is Tanner is clearly the issue internally, one source familiar with the union's inner working said. No loyalty, poor communicator, hardly around. One source offered a counter argument saying that players such as Pereira did succeed elsewhere in the case with NYCFC, and Ty Baribo, who, obviously was a player that Ernst brought in that Jim didn't play for a bit, and then he came in and started playing. So, I can understand that side of it. He was criticized. Curtin was criticized by one source for not doing more to bring along young players and was accused of not developing our team. I don't know what that's supposed to mean because he brought along a few young players. We sold them overseas after they played 5 games, right? I mean, what else are you supposed to do? The rest of those youth players, I don't think are actually MLS caliber players. The team's done well and sold players. In that model, it's super hard to sustain, one former staffer said. And then it finally crumbled because you kind of emptied the drawers and it's hard to fill them up in MLS. I think that's the other thing. But here's the damning part here. It's just been an erosion of culture, complete erosion and increased mistrust. And all the players would die for Curtin and can't stand Ernst Tanner. One source suggested that Tanner felt the team had underachieved, and not just in 2024. One source said the team's running statistics were dead average when compared to MLS, and not good enough for a team that plays a high-pressing style, while another recalled Tanner criticizing Curtin's substitution patterns. Now, here's the thing. The substitution stuff I can get. Fans have been saying the same thing. I've been asking, why are we waiting too long to make subs? Why didn't he give Baribo a chance? All that stuff earlier. I get that. I do. Did it mean he had to be fired? And that's where I kind of sit, right? I don't think so. Unless if he's telling Ernst Tanner, I'm never going to put subs in. I'm never going to play Baribo again, even after Baribo goes off or something. I think that would be a little bit more okay. But it seems like they're definitely not on the same page. And that's kind of what I was speculating earlier this year, right? When we're like, look, last year, they bring in some depth. Curtin doesn't play the depth, but also, is it the best depth? That's kind of where I feel like Curtin has been outspoken saying we need more depth. We need more players, better. We need spending. Something that Blake brought up as well earlier this year, right before he signed his long deal.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have some of those players that the fans feel should deserve a shot that Curtin's not playing or doesn't play. And then you're like, there's the depth, play it. But I can kind of see where Curtin's like, that's not the depth I wanted, right? And it seems like they just weren't on the same page. And at that point, if you're Jay Sugarman, do you get rid of the guy who says we need to spend more money? Or the guy that says, I can run this team and win a cup with the spending that you are providing us, which is near the bottom of the league, if we just change the manager. And I think Jay Sugarman looked at his bank account and said, let's do that.
That's a good point. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, and I feel bad for Union fans because I feel like the direction in which you are about to head is not a good direction. I just... And maybe it's, maybe it's a matter of getting somebody in there that they want, and maybe they feel like that's maybe they feel like that. My cats don't agree, but I think there is a part where I feel like the Union are going to, I don't know, regress even more, and then you've got older pieces that are harder to kind of pawn off onto people, so you got to wait till their contracts are up to get more players in and positions in, and it's going to be a disaster, I think, for a little bit. And I don't know
totally, I totally agree. And some of the quotes coming out from this press conference were pretty much like, we're not changing our strategy. Okay. And Sugarman saying, I think these players are still actually able to perform at a higher level than we were, which makes it seem like we're not bringing in much. Now, like Tanner said, we're going to bring in like a new person for each position for depth going into next season. Okay, we'll see how that is. But like he hasn't hit on some of those transfers the way he was earlier in his time, because his method is, as it says in the article, like finding diamonds in the rough.
Right.
And sometimes they're just rough. They're not actually diamonds, right? So
Yeah.
like sometimes you just get the coal. You don't get the pressure that turns them into diamonds. So that is the worry I have for the Union is, was Curtin elevating all of these players who would die for him apparently to get to those MLS Cup finals, overperforming and winning a supporter shield and being 1 point short of another supporter shield? Or does another manager come in and be able to shake that up as well and do the same? I don't know. Right. But I think if I'm a player in that building, it sounds like it was a shock. And I wouldn't be shocked if some of those players end up leaving. We know Bedoya signed like what, a 1-year deal. He wants to keep playing. It didn't sound like Ernst Tanner wanted him back last year. They probably brought him back for Curtin. So there you go. He's probably, I would say Bedoya's probably gone. And that's one of your leaders, right? Blake just signed a deal, so maybe he's safe, but like he was complaining about spending earlier last season. I mean, who knows, right? Like we could see an exodus here, or maybe not. But if we're expecting just these youth players that got to the final and shockingly lost, like all Philadelphia Union teams do in the final, for Union 2, if we're expecting them to step up and just play in Major League Soccer and be going up against the Albas, the Messis, the Chuchos, the Chichos, all of them, then we're in some problems here.
Yeah. No, it's yeah. They're never going to get the star player either. I think it's, they're never going to be the one to go out and get a huge signing, and I think
no, you sent me that Cincinnati one.
Yeah.
$15 million. Remember now, right. Cincinnati raided our front office, okay, in coaching. This is a $15 million. What did earlier this year? I was giving you our stats for our highest fee, and it was like Gazdag with $2 million or something. Like these are the type of things they're able to do when they go to other teams that have money. Jay Sugarman is not as rich as these other owners, and that's always going to be a problem, especially when you're in a big market like Philadelphia. Like It seems like it's being run as if it was like Austin, like a smaller city,
right?
Not as big of a market. But come on, Philadelphia. All right, well, we can move on from talking Philadelphia Union, and we'll talk about the playoffs. I saw a lot of people calling this the biggest upset in MLS history. Logan, this was Atlanta and Miami. We'll start with this game because this was the talk of the town. Do you think it is the biggest upset in MLS history? Because I feel like, I don't know if personally I can put it there. I think if we look at the number, I think people are just looking at the number, saying the 9 seed versus the 1 seed and broke the point barrier. But off the top of my head, I can't list another one, but I'm just sitting here thinking like, is this really it? Is this the biggest upset? And I think maybe part of it that sours it is the best of 3, right? Like,
yeah.
That game wasn't the biggest upset. Maybe the result of these 3 games is the biggest. I don't know. It makes it a little harder to judge because guess what? If we had did this like every other season before last year, Miami goes through and there is no big upset. So I feel like I'm kind of like weighing that unfairly, maybe. I don't know. What's your thought? Is this the biggest upset?
I mean, I think when you talk about teams that we've seen in the past that are coming in as huge favorites, I think yes. I think that this is, especially with a team, Jordan, that had 34 points in the regular season. This is a 9 seed. I just feel like Atlanta United had so much working against it that to not place it at one of the biggest upsets in the history of MLS, I think that that would be, kind of kind of damning towards Atlanta. I feel like Atlanta really did have, and especially roster and talent wise on paper, I don't think that this team really did have a chance. And I'd say that, I mean, anybody that watches this league or has watched this league, to beat Inter Miami, who's the best team that's ever played in MLS, to beat them twice and to beat them twice at their house, against the best player in the world and probably in the history of football, it's hard not to, right? We always say that that's kind of a cliche. Biggest history, biggest game, biggest score, best player ever, that kind of stuff. But when it comes down to it, Lionel Messi is the best player in history. MLS, Inter Miami just had the best season with Messi only playing about half those games. Now he's back in the playoffs. He's a big moment player. So is Luis Suarez. So is Busquets. So is Alba. And to get bounced in a best of three, like that's huge. If this was like a one-off, then I wouldn't say so. But to do this twice against a team that is that good and to score goals in regulation, I mean, Atlanta, I mean, totally deserves this. And I mean, I think this is probably the biggest shock result that we'll ever see.
Big gameplay by Brad Guzan this series. He kind of had an issue in the first game, right, when he was trying to kick it and they scored in that game 1. But since, he's been playing really well. And they have ended up, or was that game 2 that was. And then they came back and won on anyway. But anyway, he had like one flub, really. Other than that, he was playing out of his mind. He was constantly stopping Messi. It was wonderful. And I think he's a big reason why Atlanta is where they are. And I was kind of looking at the U.S. roster like, oh my God, is he going to make the team? No, they didn't call him in. But what could have been, right? I like at this point, I would probably take Guzan going up in
As the third keeper, yeah.
As the first keeper. None of the other keepers are playing well.
Well, Jordan's like, let's slot him in. Yeah.
None of the other keepers are playing well right now. Like it's none of them are even playing. You know,
you got to play well.
It's a problem. But so I probably would have called Guzan. Now, of course, I don't know if they would have been like, if they were technically off limits because they made it through or what. Like, I feel like some of those have that, some of those teams kind of have that deal, I feel like, with the federation while they're in the playoffs. But it's been, it was a crazy result. I saw a lot of people celebrating it, and I get it. I understand people are fed up with the Messi coverage or whatever. But it, like, I saw some people saying, like, I just want my sport back and stuff. Like, it hasn't been that egregious. Like, I really don't think it has. I don't know what these people are talking about. We wouldn't even have this sport if Beckham didn't come over. Like, we wouldn't have this league, and he had some of the same coverage. I don't like really think it's that egregious, but whatever.
Every good sport has that, though. It's the sporting,
Right,
not only
right.
the hero but the villain. Like you need a villain. I mean, it's the same thing that LeBron James was great for the league, not because of the, if you were a fan of his team. I mean, it was great even if you were a fan of his team, but it was even better because he was the villain. Like everything went through him, and you had
Once
to beat
he
him.
went to Miami,
It makes it so much more fun to have somebody or a team like the Yankees. Like I know you didn't like that, but the Yankees were great. The Dodgers right now, they're great to have around because it continuously will make people want to get better. If you don't have that, Jordan, and there's just parity all the time, the league's not going to be able to sustain itself. Like, you've got to have superstars. You're going to have superstars in this league, and they're going to make you a lot of money. And if you want this league to grow and be successful and grow into your hometowns and allow you to do different things and see different people, you got to let this thing grow. And the only way to do that is just to rally around stars. It's always been that way.
How much do you pay attention to commentators while you're watching?
I would say the only ones that I really
Any
pay
sport.
attention, the ones that I pay attention to probably, I'd say it's like 50%. Like, I listen sometimes, and it's a lot of times I just tune them out.
Yeah, I feel like anytime I hear people complaining about announcers, I feel like I'm tuning them out because, like,
there are some bad ones. I will say
there are, but I'm sitting here watching, Thursday Night Football. Ravens were playing, and I saw people. I got online afterwards. The Raven fans were like, "Why were they so pro Cincinnati?" And I was like, "What? Like, I didn't hear that.
What?
I didn't hear that." I don't know.
They're
Maybe
always pro the other team. Like,
Yeah,
they're always
yeah,
pro
yeah.
the other team. You know what I mean? Like, there's only one person that I actually believe does call games very lopsided in the way that they call them, but he's never really on games, and that's Stephen A. Smith, because he makes it very clear that he's a New York fan.
Yeah, he's a Knicks fan, right?
And he's more involved with day of, like, he's sometimes brought into conversation and pre-games and stuff, where you can tell which way he leans. Whereas, like, David Ortiz and them, of course, you know which way their allegiances go. But when you're a journalist and you're covering something there at the event, I feel like they do such a good job nowadays to play both sides. Like, Boog Shambi should 100% be rooting against the Brewers. But when I watched him call the Brewer games, he's the Cubs announcer. And I never once felt, I actually felt like he was more in favor of the Brewers. And like, as a Cubs fan, you're like, what the heck? But I think that's stupid. Like, I think people get too hyped up about it.
Yeah,
there are some really bad ones.
Yeah, there are. I mean, I was sitting there like, I don't know. So when people complain about the constant Messi coverage, I'm like, maybe I'm just.
They don't talk about it in game that he's not in.
I'm like, maybe
right?
I'm. Yeah, maybe the pregame stuff talks about them and stuff. That's to be expected. I don't understand. I don't know. I just. It is what it is. And guess what? He's probably only got a few years left. So just wait a couple of years, I guess. I don't know. Tune him out. Put it on mute. Put the local radio feed on. You can do that.
Yeah. They've obviously never watched other sports, because this happens with every, like, there's a reason why Bronny James is still getting highlights and coverage when he's playing for the G League and LA. And there's a reason why Patrick Mahomes is always shown. And like, come on, like, it happens in every freaking sport. Shohei Ohtani owns baseball. Like, it's like they have the Ohtani thing where they show where he's coming up with the lineup
in the eighth.
Yeah, like, did you see that, Jordan? It was great. It was like they've been posting that up on different things. And what was the election?
The
MLS
like
playoff.
200 some days away or whatever. Yeah,
it was great. But we need that. We need Messi. This is the best thing to ever happen to this league. 100%.
Them getting bounced or Messi play?
No. We could get into that. So what are your thoughts on that, Jordan? Like,
I actually do think it's good that they got bounced. Was I hoping for like a Galaxy Miami final? I think that'd be fun. But all the people that were pissed about the Messi coverage, guess what? They still watched that game and they were celebrating when Atlanta won.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe we had some really good game threes. Maybe the game 3 format is fine, but you know what else would give us the same do or die, winner take all? A one-off.
Right.
It would be the same result.
Yeah. I always thought that. I was like, it's so stupid to do 1 or 3. Like, I get maybe like 1 or 5. Like, that's a totally different thing. But 1 and 3 is kind of funny to me, because it's like the home team will probably win. And then if it's a close series, the other home team will win. Or, I don't know. And plus, soccer is just so unpredictable at this point. Like, especially MLS.
Oh, yeah. So Alba came up with, he said, this is not right. This is not right. The best format would be take the winner of the East Conference, the winner of the West Conference, put them in MLS Cup. I was like, you're describing the World Series from the 60s.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know why they don't do that anymore? Is because there's not as much money in it, because not every team is in the playoffs. So thank you, Jordi Alba. That is probably how it should be determined, but we determined we like money. So we have 15 teams out of 30 make
Yeah.
the
I don't
playoffs.
know how the Premier League survived at this point. They don't have any playoffs. How do they? What? So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
true.
funny. That's funny.
They make a lot of money.
Jordi Alba, league commissioner.
Yeah, so they're done. I saw some people asking, was this a I don't know, friend of the show, Fabian, put out
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
thing asking if this is like a
Kevin Durant.
or like a flop, right? Like
Oh,
I
I
think
thought you meant. Did
no,
you
I
see the
meant like
tweet that he put out about Kevin Durant?
no.
So he said, will this be Miami's Kevin Durant moment where they go and get Neymar next year? Because they're like, oh, well, we can't beat him. Let's just get more players.
And he also posted like, is this like a disaster season for Miami or like time for them to blow it up? And I don't think you can do that. They won the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like the MLS supporter shield, they won the point total, all that kind of stuff. They just and guess what? If it was 2 years ago, they win this game against Atlanta because of the format
Mm-hmm.
and is a one-off, and they won that game. They won the first game. So I made a joke to you. I was like, if Miami loses this game, goodbye, best of 3, right? But
Yeah.
really, like, you can't complain if you're Miami because you didn't get one chance. You got 3 chances to move on, and
Mm-hmm.
they couldn't get it done. Atlanta played super well, and that was that. I don't know. Like, I obviously it was a flop in the playoffs, right? But at another time, like they still won another trophy. They've won a trophy every year since Messi's gotten there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can't see it as a failure so far. Miami and this team. I wouldn't be shocked if maybe if they moved on from Tata, maybe would be what they would do. But I feel like they're just going to try to run it back and add some more players and try to make another run. Like I don't think you just say, "Oh, we're blowing it up and keeping Messi and we're trying to." You can't get a better surrounding squad than the players he has. I'm sorry, you
Right.
can't find another Jordi Alba, another Busquets, another Luis Suarez. You know, you're gonna have to keep most of them. You just try to improve those fringe pieces, the bench pieces, to try to get that team over the top.
Yeah. You might not be able to find another Busquets, an Alba, a Suarez, a Messi, but you can, Jordan. You can find another Neymar because he's not there. But I do. I think. I think. I think it will entice them to go out searching for because they can do things with money that because of how rich some of these players are and their endorsements with other deals and stuff like that. Like it's 100%. I love when people go, "Oh, they're doing something with the salary." No, they're not. I guarantee you, they're doing exactly what the rules are now. I think they're just using other money to propel the deals forward because who doesn't want to, like Funko Jordan? Like this is the first time MLS has ever had like a real legit Funko thing. Like it was like we're gonna make a four
We're
pack of these 4 players, and like that's huge. I mean, they're getting into pop culture stuff. Like I mean, that's what you need, and that's what essentially will happen as more time comes on. We're going to get younger and younger stars to come over here. I think Kevin De Bruyne is 100% going to come over here. Like I just you're starting to see this wave, Jordan, and these guys are starting to get younger and younger and younger. I mean, it is. It's going to get to a point where we're going to have some really good players in this league, and I think this is a great idea and way to test out just how successful this can be. And Inter Miami is the one doing it. Like they're the ones that are the guinea pigs. They're the ones that, and it is pretty fun to see that teams can beat this team, right? They
yeah,
were heavy favorites and they did get bounced, and that's good on this league. That's good on Atlanta. That's good on the competition. That's good for Don Garber, even though it might not be as valuable in the pockets as it wanted to be. It's definitely going to entice fans to say, "Hey, just because Messi's here doesn't mean he's going to run through the league." Because if Jordan, they put this kind of dream team idea together in like PSG, they ran the league. Like they just run through teams. Whereas in the United States, with the way that salary caps have worked, our leagues are really starting to figure out how to make these things more competitive. the NBA and NFL have gotten to a point where it is so competitive now, where like teams look like they're bad or they have bad records. It's because those teams are so close to each other now in talent, the NBA especially. If you look at the talent level, there's no, there's not these super teams. And the US has really done a nice job. And a lot of these owners are owners that own these MLS clubs. So I think that there's this idea and intentionality behind the fact that competitive sports is what's going to drive people to the game, because you can look at the World Series numbers where I think baseball is a little further away from this. Baseball kind of goes to, if you have rich owners, you have a good team. I think if you look at the World Series numbers, the best World Series was when the Cubs and the Guardians were playing, because that was a better story than what the Dodgers and Yankees are now currently, just spending a ton of money. So again, I think there's this nice competitive balance. I think it's actually working in favor for the sports. And I think MLS can jump on that train and ride it pretty far, because I feel like they really do. I feel like they've really figured out we can have stars in this league, but it is such a parity league that it's so unpredictable. Anybody can win it.
All right, let's take a look at the other games here. We had NYCFC beating FC Cincinnati in game 3. Wild shootout, by the way. Anytime NYCFC was about to wrap it up, they would miss or get a shot blocked. And then it would go back to Cincinnati being able to like maybe grab a chance here. And then if Cincy scored, NYCFC would score. But if Cincy missed, NYCFC would miss. It was like this crazy shootout. But Cincinnati is knocked out now. That's the top 3 seeds in the East gone, because Columbus Crew got bounced, as we talked about last time, right? They got swept by the Red Bulls. So now we thought we were going to have a Hell is Real derby. We instead have a Hudson River derby for the playoffs here, 6 and 7 seed. That's going to be Saturday, November 23rd at 5:30 p.m. On MLS Season Pass. That's going to be at Citi Field. We also had LAFC get through against Vancouver. Vancouver had pushed, LAFC to a 3rd game, and LAFC just wrapped it up like they needed to. So LAFC versus Seattle is going to be Saturday, November 23rd at 10:30 p.m. in LA. Then we have the LA Galaxy facing off against Minnesota United. These are 2 teams that have been sitting pretty and will have been sitting pretty for 3 weeks before they had played another game. Because as a reminder, these games are not this weekend, they're next weekend, the 23rd and the 24th. LA Galaxy and Minnesota is going to be Sunday, November 24th at 6 p.m. And then, of course, Orlando City beat Charlotte in what we can say is another wild penalty shootout, as Gillespie made like 3 saves. But Logan, it took a handball penalty, right? Like at the very, I don't think it was a handball. Actually, it was a penalty at the very death of stoppage time to give Orlando a shot to equalize, to go to the shootout, which then Gillespie stood on his head and got Orlando into the next round. What was your thoughts going on with that game? Because that was a wild game. They were at home, Orlando, right? But it took a very late penalty call that then gets VAR review very late. Like he's about to kick this ball into the net and they're like, hold up, go check it out. The ref comes back and says, no, it is a penalty. And which is great, by the way, getting the microphone. Oh, thank God. I love this so great when they're able to talk over the speaker. What was your thoughts on Orlando's performance and them getting into the next round here?
Yeah, it was an interesting match, and just kind of overall thoughts, like they could have looked better. They had their chances, they had their moments. There's times where Orlando City gets into these weird funks where they can't figure out how to put the ball in the net. I kind of felt like that, which was kind of concerning, because that's kind of what they've fallen into in the past when they've kind of underperformed, is when they get good shots, but they're not on goal. They're not on target. They're not anywhere close. They don't look creative enough. Like the shots aren't even close, but it looks good on the stat sheet, looks good in possession, because they're a possession-based team. People will always look at Orlando City and go, oh man, they've controlled possession quite a bit, but that's what Oscar Pareja does. That's what he's built his attack around is they, especially at home, they are always, a 56, 57, 58 possession team. They just like to have that control and pass it around quite a bit using Martin Ojeda and Facundo Torres on the sides out there, with Ojeda kind of doing what he does in the midfield and what has been so instrumental to their success. But they just didn't have that success. I also think, Jordan, that if there's a coach out there that I think you could see a huge jump in his team's performances from year in and year out. I think Dean Smith has really figured this league out. They've got great support in Charlotte. I think that they're going to have the money to spend. Will they spend? Will the ownership spend? I think it's Tupper is their owner, who doesn't typically spend quite effectively or like he should. It's usually underwhelming. So if they do spend, I think Dean Smith could really have this team perform, because they performed really well this year. I think they've outperformed some of their numbers and some of their marks. So I was really impressed with Charlotte. I knew they'd come out and put up a good fight because the Dean Smith team would. But I mean, Orlando was almost eliminated, and then the 100th minute or whatever it was when Duncan McGuire gets brought down, tugging on his shirt, brought down. Looked like he dislocated his shoulder, which was gross. But yeah, it was by sheer luck almost that Orlando City's able to pull this off. You couldn't have felt good about this if you're an Orlando City fan all the way through the match. You didn't feel good until Duncan McGuire, unfortunately, is laying on the pitch with his arm out of slot, and
yeah, dang,
yeah, and doing that. But it didn't feel good. I was like, well, at least if we get to penalties, I've got more confidence that we've got guys that just score penalties. Like, we've got a lot of guys that can score penalties. So having that happen, but again.
And then only needing to really score 2 or 3 of them because Gallese blocks 3. You're like, dang, that's pretty good.
Yeah. And he's a good shot stopper. So that's where I think where he and Blake are pretty similar. I'm always pretty confident when Orlando City gets to penalties, because it seems like Gallese takes it to a different level, kind of like Guzan too. I would put those 3 probably pretty high in shot stopping when it comes to penalties. Like, they're very good at what they do. When it does get to that point. But I didn't feel good. And I don't really feel good about the fact that Atlanta is probably the hottest team in the Eastern Conference right now.
Yeah. And that's another thing. We thought maybe we'd have a Florida matchup. We instead have a pretty good rivalry matchup.
Yeah.
Of, Orlando, Atlanta. This is a rivalry that gets pretty hot.
The Godfather, he's no longer. So that would be fun, though, like bringing them down. They travel very well to Atlanta or to Orlando. It will be intense. It's a Sunday day game, which I think is a benefit to Orlando City.
They're not playing at the stadium?
Was that what I say?
You said they're playing intense.
Oh, I was like, what did I say? Where did I say they were playing? I'm like thinking I said Camping World for some reason. I was like,
yeah,
is it playing Disney? But yeah, no, I think it favors, of course, it's going to favor the home team. We get pretty hyped up for Atlanta when they visit. We don't like Atlanta, even when Joseph isn't there. But their fans are going to travel in bunches. They're going to take up a whole top section up there. I think they're going to get really loud, very boisterous. But yeah, I'm concerned. Like, that last 2 games, Jordan, really, like, we really struggled to create anything. Like, even the game in Charlotte, like, we were held. So it just, I think it's concerning just because of the history Orlando City tends to have and how quickly their attack can vanish at times.
Alrighty, let's talk about the hosting scenarios.
Can we talk about one more thing before?
Yeah.
So Lucho Acosta, Jordan, I don't know if you saw this.
Referenced maybe playing his last game with Cincy.
Yeah, and said that situations around the club, in and around the club, and with his family, and within his personal life, it seems like he's played his last game. Is kind of how that quote came about, which is really odd because, like, I guess because in other sports you would hear about that kind of stuff, and not just a player dropping it after a playoff game. It stunned the Cincinnati writers. Like, they were like, "What?" Like, then they were interviewing him. They're like, "Wait, what?" Like, you know, and you think you know people, but Lucho doesn't seem very happy. So I don't know what that all entails. It
posturing for a new contract.
Yeah. Right. So I don't know. It was very interesting. The former MVP candidate this year, all of a sudden decides to flip the script after a playoff game. That's very odd. And I get emotions are running high, and he's probably not thrilled. But like, this is a team, Jordan, that just got decimated with injuries. I don't really think, and they didn't really
And
have
they spend money. They're talking about spending $15 million for a striker.
I don't.
Like,
Yeah,
I
know.
would love that if I
Sure.
was if I were them.
Maybe Lucho didn't know. Maybe didn't.
Yeah,
know.
true. Maybe that's why they leaked it today. They're like,
dude,
we
Lucho,
need
look
him
at
to
this.
come back.
I don't know. Very odd timing.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll follow that throughout the offseason if he goes. Okay. Priority hosting order. We have number 1, LAFC. If LAFC are in the final, they're hosting it. Number 2, LA Galaxy. If Galaxy are in the final, they're hosting it. Number 3, if Seattle's in the final, they're hosting it. 4, if Orlando City is in the final against Minnesota United or somebody, or Minnesota
United. Minnesota United,
they're hosting. Okay.
All right, come on, you loons.
If Minnesota United is 5th, and they would host if any of the New York teams, which are the 6th and 7th seeds, make it. That's it. Those are your hosting things. Only 5 teams can host. It would really take a lot for Minnesota to host. Like I said, it would have to be, I think, NYCFC and Red Bulls. One of those would have to reach the final.
Oh, man, you're just killing Atlanta out there.
Orlando. Yeah. Sorry, Atlanta. They're a 9 seed. Yep, my bad.
Man, George's out there just slaughtering Atlanta. No,
they're actually the likely one to make it. So really,
loons, you're in luck, baby.
I don't know if I'm if I'm Minnesota, if I can get past the LA teams or Seattle, then I feel pretty good of hosting that final, because I would think Red Bulls or Atlanta probably are most likely going to be the teams that get there.
Weird how momentum works.
Yeah. It is weird that there's, if you look at the East, it's a 7 seed, a 6 seed, a 4 seed, and a 9 seed that are left. That's it. Crew are out. Cincy's out. Miami's out. Charlotte's out. Those are your 1, 2, 3, and 5 seeds. They're gone. Over in the West, we have the 1, the 2, the 4, the 6. A little bit more balanced over there.
Yeah.
If I am in the West, and if I am any of LA, Seattle, and Galaxy, Logan, I think I would feel pretty good that this is our year. This is a year we can get to MLS Cup and win it, because we will not have to go through a Columbus, a Cincinnati, or a Miami.
Yeah.
It's pretty open in the West side. You know, like if one of those 3, which are the 1, the 2, or the 4, can get to MLS Cup and only have to face like one of the New York teams or Orlando or Atlanta, I would feel pretty good.
Yeah.
Now, again, if you want to talk about momentum and stuff, maybe, yes, they would feel a little apprehensive about Atlanta if Atlanta gets there, because you're like, whoa, yeah, they're the 9 seed, but they've been playing pretty well. They have an interim manager that's getting them to play. Guzan's playing well. But if you're just looking at, we thought we'd have to face Miami or Columbus, and we don't have to, then this is the year, if you're one of those West teams, that you want to get to that final and say, we have a pretty darn good shot.
Yeah. And these are one-off games. And if you like you said, Jordan, I think if you look at the Western Conference, you could make an argument that those are the 4 best teams left in the league. Like, the Loons have started to play really well. Seattle was really starting to play well. LAFC's kind of stumbled here and there, but they're such a good team. It's like you can't really, especially playing in LA. I just feel like BMO Field. I just feel like it's not necessarily the best place. Or are they stadium? I can't remember which one they are.
If you're LAFC, holy crap, you're like, we host the rest of the way. If we can get to that final, we have a shot of adding a second star to our crest, getting just a little under halfway to LA Galaxy's total MLS Cup wins.
Yeah.
And we can do that all this year after so much pressure was on us because we had lost so many finals in a row. We lost Leagues Cup final. If we can get to the they won the Open Cup too, so they actually already have a cup, right? So they're
Yeah,
feeling
they're in
pretty
Club
good.
World Cup. Yeah,
So
because
they
they've
feel
already
pretty good.
qualified. Yeah, and they've got a trophy. They got a trophy. And Jordan, I think going through LA Galaxy would even sweeter for LAFC
Especially
fans.
once they stole the 1 seed. They
Mhm.
stole the 1 seed from them on the last week of the
Right.
season. In the last minute of the season, really. I don't know. If I'm the Galaxy fan, though, I'm thinking we can take this LAFC team who's been underperforming, and this is a time to get our six trophy because we've been playing pretty well too. And this thing, we would host it if we get to that final. I would think if Galaxy and Vaney want to, prove that they have actually turned the corner and they're back on top, man, what other way to do that than win MLS Cup this season? That would be make everything worth it.
Yeah. So who are you picking? Who would you pick? Now that you've seen it, now I know you got your bracket, but like now that you're looking at it, would you change anything? Is there anything like who are you predicting to go through in each of these rounds or in each of these matchups?
I feel pretty good about Galaxy beating Minnesota. Galaxy handled the Rapids pretty darn well. Um, they were firing on all cylinders. Seattle did really well against Houston in the sense of sweeping them. They had to take 2 penalty shootouts, but I don't know. I feel like LAFC will probably handle business in that regard, right? I feel like they would have to. So at this point, I'm thinking we're having an El Trafico conference final against like a Red Bull Atlanta, Red Bull Orlando. I'm actually probably leaning Atlanta because I wasn't impressed by Orlando's against Charlotte, and I think the way Atlanta's playing is above how Charlotte's been playing. So I would kind of be worried if I'm Orlando. Yes, they're at home, but Atlanta just went into Miami and took care of that. Like in Atlanta, I would probably say like if I'm picking El Trafico and then like Red Bulls Atlanta, that'd be an interesting matchup. Red Bulls have
Yeah,
never won MLS Cup, by the way.
that's still wild to me because of how
Original
good they've had.
team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've had some great years too, some really great players, arguably two of the best attacking players. Like, it just baffles me that they've never won, and especially with the network of teams that they've had, like they couldn't figure out how to get their youth players over here to at least win them one. Like that's just
Yeah.
blows my mind. Especially in the early days of MLS, like when there weren't that many teams, they seemed to be a pretty good market for MLS. Like NYCFC didn't exist, so
Yeah.
they were the team. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think LA, I think there is an El Trafico matchup waiting to happen. I think you make a really interesting point. I was in agreement, like walking into the podcast today, I was like, I'm trying to be unbiased as possible, right? With Orlando City, wearing the Orlando City shirt. I still do. I worry because it kind of feels eerily similar to when Orlando City just kind of vanishes. It doesn't play well. Like that fact that they've really had the tough time with Atlanta or Charlotte, where I feel like Atlanta's going to be rolling on in on steam, like and Wei Guzan's playing and that defense, like it just feels like they've, I don't know, like I worry because Orlando really struggled with Miami, Atlanta bounced Miami, and I know that's not it doesn't transfer, it's not transferable, but I'm going to say Atlanta wins that game. I've got a weird feeling about that game as an Orlando City fan, and I think you're right. I think the Red Bull do take care of NYCFC because I do feel like they're the better team of the two. I just feel like the Red Bull are going to be able to contain NYCFC much better, and they took away Cucho. Like Cucho could not do anything. I feel like that NYCFC will struggle because Red Bull can take things away with Emil Forsberg, and that midfield can just eat you up. Their defense, when they do play well, it's hard to score on them. So, yeah, I'm going to two Road Warriors in the East.
So here's something as well that I think is interesting when it comes to Atlanta, Orlando. Atlanta took the season series. Atlanta beat Orlando March 17th,
I remember
2-0
that. It was awful. Yeah.
in Atlanta, and then they
Yep.
won on decision day, 2-1 to get into the playoffs.
Oh, that's
So
right.
imagine this: they beat Orlando to get into the playoffs, and
In
Orlando could
Orlando.
have just in Orlando, and Orlando could have just dispatched them and not have to worry about facing them in the playoffs. That kind of seems ripe for a Atlanta win.
Yeah.
Like, you made your own enemy by letting us into the playoffs, and we are in, and we are going to knock you out.
Yeah. I'm telling you, I got a weird feeling. I got a real weird
Yeah, me
feeling about
too.
it.
Yeah. Look, that could be bias in the sense of recency, right? Recency
Yeah.
bias in the sense of we have just watched them dispatch the best team in MLS history. When you look at points, that you're sitting there like, oh, maybe we're just overreacting to that, right? But it is something to keep in mind that they have not lost to Orlando this season. And now, they will be playing each other again. We both said Red Bull, right? Moving on. Guess
Yeah.
what's fun about that? Red Bulls have not beat NYCFC this season.
Making their own enemies on that side too. No.
NYCFC beat them at home in Red Bull Arena 5-1 near the end of the season. And they lost in NYCFC in May 2-1 Red Bulls. So Red Bulls lost that. So if it goes that way, you would have an NYCFC Atlanta matchup. And Galaxy Minnesota, what was that? Because I definitely thought that Minnesota beat them earlier this season. But I will check that real quick because I'm not confident on that. Let's see. Every time they played Minnesota, well, they had a draw in Minnesota that finished 2-2. And then they beat Minnesota 2-1. So yeah, Galaxy actually is probably favored in that regard. They've drawn and won. The game they won was in LA, which is where they'll be playing the next game. So that's tracking. And let's check the season series for Seattle and LAFC while we're here. Okay, LAFC and and Seattle. LAFC, remember, they beat Seattle to start the season 2-1. That was when Seattle started off the season really shaky. Then they beat Seattle 3-0 in July, and that was it. So LAFC has the leg up, I guess, on Seattle this season as well. So if you go off of that, we would have the El Tráfico and El Tráfico and then Atlanta NYCFC. Now, of course, all it takes is one game to break those cycles, but pretty interesting how that has worked out.
And so I will say it will stay true to a lot of things, like where the team that has the upper hand in the season typically does bring that advantage into the year or into the playoffs, especially in soccer. It feels just because like there's just teams that you don't match up well with, and I do not think that Seattle matches up with LAFC very well as a fast-paced LAFC team, and that's not a very fast-paced Seattle team. They're kind of grind it out and defend you, but I feel like LAFC at home with that momentum and I feel like they'll run them through. I just feel like LAFC's got so much talent up front. And then, like you said, I think LA Galaxy, LA Galaxy, Jordan, feel like the team that might be the hardest team to beat this year. Like, I don't know. I've got
I
like this
think so
feeling.
too.
I've just got this feeling like with them too, where they're just so hard to beat. Like they're gonna outscore you. They've played better defense this year. Like I just feel like LA Galaxy, like this might be their year to do it.
All right, let's wrap it up with the U.S. roster that Pochettino has called up 25 players for training camp, as we have a CONCACAF Nations few match days here. Thursday, November 14th at 8 o'clock Eastern, they will be playing on TNT, True TV, Universo, Max, Peacock, and they will be going up against Jamaica in Kingston. Then Monday, November 18th, they will be playing in City Park in St. Louis against Jamaica at 8 o'clock Eastern, and that is, again, on TNT, True TV, Universo, and Max or Peacock. Goalkeepers, we have Diego Curtin from Barcelona Athletic, Patrick Schulte from Columbus Crew, Zach Steffen from the Rapids, and Matt Turner from Crystal Palace. Defenders, we have Mark McKenzie from Toulouse, Tim Ream from Charlotte, Chris Richards from Crystal Palace, Anthony Robinson from Fulham, Miles Robinson from FC Cincinnati, Joe Scally from Borussia Mönchengladbach, and Austin Trusty from Celtic. Midfielders, we have Brendan Aronson from Leeds. We have Gianluca Busio, Venezia. We have Johnny Cardoso from Real Betis, Weston McKennie from Juventus, Aidan Morris from Middlesbrough, Yunus Musa from AC Milan, Tanner Tessman from Olympique Lyon, and Malik Tillman from PSV. Forwards, we have Cade Cowell from Guadalajara, Ricardo Pepi from PSV Eindhoven, Kristen Pulisic from AC Milan, Brandon Vasquez from Monterrey, Tim Weah from Juventus, and Alex Zendejas from Club America. Pretty standard, right? Goalkeepers will interesting. Diego Curtin from Barcelona.
Yeah, and Schulte bringing. I mean, I do feel like Schulte is a really good shout for somebody to keep an eye on in the future, because I feel like all the hype was around Gaga, and probably still is somewhat, but like
she was great in Joker.
Yeah, but Patrick Schulte, Jordan, is no slouch. I don't know much about Diego. I actually do like this though. Mauricio, I will say, Greg was very reluctant on calling Busio in. Tessman was kind of on the outskirts. I would even say that like Cade Cowell, there was moments where I feel like Cade was like kind of left out there. I'm guessing Haji Wright is hurt, maybe. I don't know.
No, I think he just scored.
He's just not. Is he?
I think he just scored over the weekend.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess
I'm assuming Rain is hurt.
I think he just got to look. I think he just got to look. Last window, so maybe they're just trying to rotate.
Is Reyna hurt? He is, isn't he?
I think so. I do.
Why do I feel like that's a thing? Gio.
I think he's hurt, and I know Sargent's hurt.
Yeah, I knew Josh was. I don't know. I can't. On quick search, I cannot find.
He's been injured since sidelining his left groin. That was in October. He won't play until 2025 for the U.S., it says.
Okay. I was going to say that's weird that he was missing.
I love that I searched Gio Reyna, and it says, people also ask, is Gio Reyna injured? That's the first one.
Yeah, unfortunately, I feel like you can make that case for a lot of people. I'm sure if you typed in Daryl DK, it would also say, is he hurt? But yeah, no, I think everybody else is kind of consistent. But yeah, I love that Cade Cowell is getting a chance because he's played well. Aiden Morris is really good. Tanner Tessman's the one that kind of surprises me.
I think he's been playing well though.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think he's going to be really good. I just not somebody that I really thought,
get in everybody, see what they got.
Yeah. And not a hard window either. It's not like a extremely difficult window.
So look, I don't know. Are we doing an episode next week? We would only be talking the Jamaica games.
Probably not.
Yeah, I think we'll take the week off. We'll come back and we'll talk anything that happened in the Jamaica games, especially if we get crash out or whatever. We'll talk about that. That would probably be the emergency podcast. If we do an episode next week, it'll be bad news. It'll be
it'll be bad news.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think we'll just cover the Jamaica news on the next episode, which would be after the games we just previewed on the 23rd. So we will be recording back on the 25th, talking the Jamaica games, and then, of course, the games that are happening in the playoffs. And then we'll do an episode on December 2nd around that for build up to MLS Cup Final. And then the week after that for MLS Cup Final recap on December 9th. So only a few more weeks left until we are done for the season. We'll probably take a holiday break through Christmas, come back after New Year with good stuff after that. So I know Logan and I are going to start recording again for the Pod Awakens, our Star Wars podcast.
Yeah, we are. Look at us.
We're getting ready to do the Bad Batch binge as we did our chronological Clone Wars watch, Logan's first watch of the Clone Wars. We're going to start recording those early, and then they'll start dropping after Skeleton Crew is done premiering on Disney+. So we'll have a lot of those in the can and start recording those. So if you are a Star Wars fan and you happen to find this show, you can also catch Logan and I over there, as well as other guests over there on our Star Wars podcast, The Pod Awakens. Anything else before we head out?
No, looking forward to it. This is an exciting time, especially for us Orlando City fans. Might end this weekend, but excited to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, is this the farthest they've gotten? No, I guess not.
No,
they've gotten through a round before.
Yeah, they've gotten to. I want to say they've gotten to the conference finals. They beat the Red. Like, when was that year they beat? They beat the Red. No, maybe it is this round is the furthest they've gotten. Then, like, if they win, that'll be the first. They've never gotten to a conference final, I don't believe.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out real quick. I think the farthest they've ever gone
Conference,
because they beat NYCFC in the shootout. Remember with Schlegel? That was 2020,
Schlegel. And then they lost in New England, I think.
Right? I think that was round 1, and then they lost the next game, I think. So I think if they win against Atlanta, that would be the farthest because then they'd be going into the conference final.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. Well, there you go. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think they've ever made it to conference finals because at that point you're at 4.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that'll wrap us up here at Stateside Show on all of our social media, statesideshow@gmail.com. Have a great rest of your week, and we will catch you in 2 weeks.